Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are finally taking a look at Motaro, and his tail was just grinding on the box. Dang it, Motaro. Anyway, I've had this guy for ages and I haven't gotten around to reviewing it, but we're gonna finally review it. There's some interesting stuff to talk about, not as much as you might think for a horse, bull, person, man, centaur thing. It's not really a centaur, is it? Anybody out there who knows Mortal Kombat more than me know what he's technically called? Like, what is he? I know there's got to be a species, right? Let me know. Let me know. All right, anyway, this guy is Storm Collectibles Motaro. Mortal Kombat. Horseguy is what I'm going to call him, probably. Although he's got Ram. I don't know what to call him. I guess I'll call him Motaro. Yeah, interesting thing. All right, let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. Alrighty, this guy stands to the top of his head just about 9.5 inches, which makes him pretty close to, let's just say, 24 centimeters. And if you want to go for length, I'm not going to stretch his tail out because that seems like a silly measurement that's not that useful. But if we keep his tail curved, he's about 10.5 inches. You know, that's going to obviously depend on how much you have him bent. But for a reasonable neutral stance, about 10.5, I'm sorry, I meant to do 10.5 inches, which is 26.5 centimeters, give or take. And so, surprisingly, there's not a ton to talk about on this guy because he is like your standard Storm articulation from here up, and then some horse stuff at the back end, which we will talk about. Before we get into that, though, question of the day: is Motaro a cool character? I'm curious what you guys think. If you're a Mortal Kombat fan, I'm guessing you're going to say yes. If you're not a Mortal Kombat fan, I'm guessing it's going to be about 50-50. Very, very curious. To me, I like the design, except for the robot tail or whatever you want to call this. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan. But otherwise, Motaro is cool enough, I guess. All right, and then one last thing before we get into it. I did put a new filter on my camera, which, for not wanting to get into all the technical stuff about photography, it makes my depth of field a little bit shallower, so it makes the camera a little bit slower to autofocus, but it also knocks down like almost all of the hot spots from the lighting on the figure. So hopefully you guys will like that benefit and not mind the focus issues. We'll see how bad it gets, I guess, after the first few reviews, but we're going to go for it anyway to try to make your viewing experience a little bit nicer. Okay, so aesthetically speaking, this guy's covered in shading. His torso, as you can see, we have this lighter tan color with a lot of orangey shading, and then we have the darker orange for the rest of his body. There is shading. It's kind of like a burnt sienna shading throughout the orange parts. It's pretty much everywhere. They did a pretty good job. It's not perfect everywhere. You can see this line right here isn't quite lined up with the muscles, but it looks decent enough. The line work on here is pretty clean. That's good. There is shading throughout his robo-tail. That's pretty good. His back has the same kind of shading that the front has. Although here's the thing that just really bugs me about this guy. Mine has tons of like scratches on him. I said like scratches. They are actually scratches. There's little, you can see it. All these little tan spots are scratches, and it came that way. And he's got them on his arm too. They're not as noticeable. They look more like light spots, actual like light bouncing off of it. But he's got marks all over him. His arms are just covered in specks, and his torso is scratched to crap too. And I don't understand what happened. Did they just package this guy poorly or what? I don't know. That bothers me. As far as the head sculpt goes, I think it's good enough. I'm not sure it's the look everybody wanted. I think a lot of people probably wanted the live action look. I'm guessing that's probably not true. But either way, it's good enough. The sculpt is fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's a little bit neutral, and then the yelling face isn't my favorite, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, aesthetically speaking, they did a pretty good job. I think the sculpt is nice overall on his horse bits and all of that. His muscles are good. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 overall. I'm assuming the scratches are just on mine and hopefully not on everybody's. That's what I'm hoping for. We'll see. You guys can let me know in the comment section below if yours is covered in scratches. All right, now as far as accessories go, we do have the neutral head that comes on him in the package. Very stern, plain look. Then we have the yelling head. It's okay. It looks more like he's just opening his mouth to make a yelling pose because they didn't really flex the muscles on his face. In fact, they look more relaxed on the yelling head than they do on the neutral head. So it loses a little bit of the character, but it's good enough. It'll be fine. It's well enough painted, so that's all right. We have the 2 fist hands that come on him in the package, and then 2 different sets of relaxed hands, basically. You could use 2 as gripping hands, but they're not that much gripping hands, so be aware of that. We do get his little egg. This is the egg he lays when he is sad. and it's really well done. It's nice and translucent plastic with some different colors on there. We have red and yellow and the clearish white plastic. That's pretty cool. And we do have a display stand that goes with that if you want to make the egg float, so that's fine. And then the next accessory, I'm actually gonna pull it out and we're gonna talk about it because it's a whole person. Well, it's not a whole person. It's a skeleton, and it's one of the skeletons that they sell as a, I think they sell them in a 2-pack normally, but it's one of those. It's painted up all bloody to go with Motaro, but it's a full-on figure for all intents and purposes. So we're going to run the articulation on this guy real quick just so that you have an idea. But know that it's essentially white plastic with some red, some glossy red, and some black marks on it to look all beat up and dirty. And it's good enough. It achieves what it's trying to achieve well enough. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this guy a little bit. The jaw does articulate, which is important. You need to be able to do that. That's cool. The head is on a ball peg. It's pretty well articulated. You'll be able to get enough posing out of that for probably most of what you'll want to do. Shoulder blades are fixed. Collarbone is fixed. It doesn't actually like have a swivel or anything. That'd be super awesome if they put a pin here and a pin back here and let the whole thing kind of adjust a little bit. That's not exactly how humans work, but that would be pretty cool. Either way, they didn't do that, but they have the ball hinge here, which does get you better than horizontal in the arm. And of course, you have your full rotation out of that and a bicep swivel built into that, so that's good. Another ball hinge at the elbow, just about 90 degrees. You can technically rotate that, of course. It's just a ball hinge, so you can do whatever you want with it. Same thing for the wrist. And then for the torso, we have a ball hinge here and a ball hinge here, which is really great because even though it's not exactly how the human body works, having one at the bottom of the rib cage makes sense, and having one at the pelvis makes sense. So you can pretty much get this guy to bend over how a human would bend over. I mean, obviously this would curve on a real live person, but this is as good as you're going to get without a bendy spine. So, or a ton of separate ball hinges. So I really like that. And of course you can rotate it over and lean them to the side. You can do whatever you want. Very well thought out. I love that. Same thing for the hips. Just ball hinges that are on ball pegs, which allow the hip to look like an actual hip. They hide the articulation perfectly, and it functions almost like a real hip. So that's cool. You get most of your range there. Then you also get the ball hinge, so that's nice. You get your thigh swivel out of that hinge if you want it. Single jointed knee, just like the elbow, a little bit better than 90, so that's good. And of course, those both rotate. The ankles, another set of ball hinges, perfectly functional. Like, they still don't go that far forward. Storm is just against that. They don't like that range. But they do go pretty far back, and you get your ankle rocker. And then we have a toe hinge as well. That one's stuck. Let's use this one. Perfectly functional. So that's really cool. The only thing they could really have done better, other than the over-the-top stuff I was talking about right here, is to add another joint at the bottom of the neck where it meets the shoulder area, whatever you want to call that. I don't know what you would call that. The top of the rib cage, I guess. They could have added another joint there, but shoot, this is freaking cool, especially since it's just an accessory for this guy. Very well done. Coolest skeleton figure I've ever seen, so that's an awesome accessory. And he does come with a buttload of hands, too. And that's it for accessories, so I think that's enough. Hands and a head for the main guy, his egg, and a skeleton. That is a pretty darn good batch. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 for accessories, only because I don't like the gripping hands. I think he should have better gripping hands. If you don't like that, that's okay. But I think gripping hands are important, and he should have them. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the articulation. The head is on our standard long double ball peg for these guys, so it connects as a ball peg in the head, and then all the way down here in the neck, so you can lean it over, and it kind of allows the head to lean. Of course, his horns are going to get in the way, and his chest is pretty floaty, so it tends to move a lot more than you might want it to. But it works. It works really well. It holds its position. That's fine. I do feel like the head doesn't sit quite low enough. There's a little bit of a lollipop going on there, and I can't quite get the chest to stay up, and I can't get the head to go any lower, so a little bit of a lollipop there. Shoulders are ball hinges which connect with a ball peg in here somewhere, so that allows the whole arm to move around. This is just a floating cap, and you do, of course, still get your ball hinge, so plenty of range there. His joints are nice and creamy. There's not too much sticking. You don't hear any real squeaking. I mean, you just hear the plastic rubbing against itself. There's no real issue there. They're not loose. I like it. That's a good happy medium between sticky and not sticky. Then we have our bicep swivel, which works just fine. No problems there. Double jointed elbow gets you just better than 90. Not a ton, but it'll be enough. And then we have ball hinge wrists, which will be just fine. We have another set of ball pegs down here in the torso. Well, it's a single ball peg, which lets the whole body move around. And that works pretty well. You're going to have to watch out for back here. His back the floating piece up here getting stuck on the lower torso, but you can just use your fingers and pop that out and it'll be fine. And otherwise, he just has tons of range. You can see why. There's a huge cavity in there with a big double ball peg. See how big that ball is? The bigger the ball is, the better the range. That's how it works. You get very little range out of this top one. That's typically how you would do it for a head. They could have had much more range, though you don't really need it, by making that another big ball, but they probably didn't have the space, so that's fine. For a torso, you can get away with 2 big balls. And then we have another ball peg, if he's like most Storm. Yeah, it feels like another ball peg down here, although that's not going to do a whole lot. There's a little bit of motion there. It's going to be mostly for rotation, but they did a really good job, all in all, putting that connection in there. Now for the horse parts, I don't know how important this is. I don't know how much he moves his horse parts, but that's essentially built like a regular hip. And I also want to say, if you cut this part off, it looks like a very buff dude with very muscular feminine legs. And I don't like it. I don't love the way that looks. But if you look at it as a horse, it's okay. So in here we have our standard Storm Collectibles hips with the hinge that goes out to the side, though it's fairly limited. Going forward works well enough because this thong thing, for lack of a better term, is fairly flexible and you can bring the legs forward. So that's good. Is there thigh swivel? Technically, a little bit of thigh swivel. For the horse thing, you can bring the legs forward if you want to, right there. And they go back just a tiny bit, not much at all. And then down here for the other part, it's just your standard hinge. There's a swivel at the bottom. I don't know how much you're going to want to use that, but you're going to only really be able to bring them back. You can't go too far forward there. So, also, he looks like he's wearing high heels. I mean, I know he's not, but he does look like it. So the bottom feet things go forward and back pretty far. And can you rotate on that? Let me see here. You can rotate it a little bit like an ankle rocker or like a ball hinge to use it as an ankle rocker. So that's pretty cool. That's well enough articulated. And for the backs, we have, looks like big old ball pegs. So these back hips are just giant ball pegs that let the whole thing move around freely as much as it can. Singular knee joints, very minimal range. Singular knee joints back here, very minimal range. And then this is the same type of joint as up here. So yeah, it's good enough. He's going to be in a lot of horse type poses. Not anything too crazy. Nothing really dynamic for these back legs especially. For the tail, mine has a big gap here. I don't know what the deal is with that. It doesn't really feel like you're meant to twist it, but this is all bendy and it's fairly good bendy. Like, it takes a bend pretty well. I do wish though, I know they can't put it at the very end, but the metal, the bendy metal stops here. So the whole bend right there, that part is soft. And that's not great. I wish it was farther up, but I get it and that's all right. But otherwise, his bendy tail is really nice from about here back. From here forward, it's very stiff. So, could be better, but not bad. Not bad at all for a horse guy. Horse bull guy. I think they did a pretty good job. For the articulation, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's not bad. I think they could have gotten away with a lot more range if they had done a few different things for the horse parts, but yeah, you know, it's fine. Like I said, I don't know about the character all that much, so maybe the horse parts don't need to do a ton. Does he do a lot of like splits and stuff? I'm guessing not. So I think it's okay. So final verdict on this guy is it's a very unique release, though at the same time, there's not a whole lot going on there. It's kind of what you would expect, and that's fine. They did a good job. So if you're into Motaro, I'm guessing you were going to buy this regardless, because it's not like there's a lot of options out there. And if you weren't into Motaro, then it's pretty average. It's not like it's anything crazy. And now you've got the information to decide if you want it. So there you go. I'm going to give it a final verdict of 8 out of 10. I think it's a fine release. It doesn't do a thing for me personally because I don't care about the character design and the horse parts aren't like exceptionally impressive, but it's fine. If I was still collecting Mortal Kombat figures, I'd be perfectly happy to add it to my collection, but I sold all those off, so this guy's going to go that same way too. Still, a very strong release. If you're into the line or into the character design, I recommend you get it. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. And if you haven't subscribed, you might want to. I have new videos almost every single day and thousands, literally thousands, already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.